as we saw in the Paul Craig fight. I think he's pretty scared of the jiu-jitsu on the floor. He's pretty scared to get caught with something. So I think I need to make him wrestle. So I need to get close, put the pressure on him, hit him a couple times, and I think he will definitely start shooting.
He is officially a top 15 welterweight in the UFC, and he makes his return to action at UFC Des Moines in May in a very, very big fight against none other than Bo Nickal. It is always my pleasure to speak to Reinier de Ridder. I try to get your name right. I try not to butcher it too bad. My bad American accent. I do my best.
Good enough. Good enough.
So obviously, listen, we talked after your last one, big win over Kevin Holland, and at that point, it's funny. I don't know if you remember this, when we did your first interview coming into the UFC, you said, after I fight Gerald, I'd like to fight Bo Nickal. That was the first name you mentioned to me. Then you go out and fight Kevin Holland. It kind of felt like maybe you'd moved beyond the Bo Nickal fight. So what was your reaction when you got the call and they said, hey, what about Bo Nickal?
Yeah, so the top of the division was tied up a little bit, huh? I really wanted a top guy, a top five guy. But now Bo Nickal is at least a top five name, right? He's a very well known guy, and if I can get him out of here as well, I think I can. Really does me well. Will really get me up there in the rankings.
You could argue, and I don't mean any offense whatsoever to some of the guys who are in that top five, top six in the world, but you could argue in terms of name value, Bo Nickal is a bigger fight just because there's so much hype around him coming in as a three-time NCAA champion. Only a couple fights he gets in the UFC. He's fighting on pay-per-view main cards in like his first and second fights, which rarely ever happens in the UFC. So again, while this isn't a higher ranked fight, you could argue, and I don't want to name names, but you could argue this is a bigger fight than even getting some of those guys in the top 5 or 6. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, definitely. That's what I think. Yeah. So I'm very happy with the matchup, and stylistically, it's going to be fun too. It's going to be cool to see who the better grappling has, who has the bigger grappling.
Now, is this 3 rounds or 5 rounds?
It's true. It's true.
Okay. Well, did you want 5 rounds?
Yeah, why not? But maybe in the next fight.
Obviously, listen, we know Bo's background, his pedigree. I'm a wrestling guy myself. I love wrestling, and we know that background. But we saw in his last fight against Paul Craig, he tried to pretty much just do a stand up. I don't think he even went for a takedown. Now, got to be honest, it wasn't the best fight in the world. It is what it is. Can I ask what you thought of that performance? Because I remember when we talked after the Kevin Holland win, again, that's kind of why we thought you moved beyond it, because his performance wasn't like the greatest, and you had gone out there and gotten 2 submission wins in a row. So what did you think of that Paul Craig fight?
Yeah, it wasn't that great to watch, huh? But he showed off that his striking is not that bad. He has pretty decent footwork as well. He hits pretty hard, right? He throws everything into that left overhand. But he wasn't really able to make a statement in that fight. Maybe he just had a bad night. Who knows?
Yeah. Now, listen, right away, when you look at a matchup like this, you're an incredible submission artist. He's a wrestler. Immediately, my thought goes to, wow, what a great grappling match. But we know how these fights play out sometimes, right? Like, even your fight with Gerald ended up being a bit of a striking fight until you were able, you ended up getting him down and obviously, finishing the fight a little later. How much I guess the question is, do you think he will grapple you? I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, do you think he will actually try to take you down?
I don't. I think I have to make him wrestle. Huh? As we saw in the Paul Craig fight, I think he's pretty scared of the jiu-jitsu on the floor. He's pretty scared to get caught with something. So I think I need to make him wrestle. So I need to get close, put the pressure on him, hit him a couple times, and I think he will definitely start shooting. Yeah.
Now, listen, obviously, having followed your career so much in one championship, you get labeled as a grappler, and for good reason. You got incredible submissions. But as much as I love wrestling, wrestling is not MMA. And I've said a lot of times, there are guys who are better wrestlers in MMA than even some of the best wrestlers in like the amateur level. Immediately people are going to say, can you get him to take you down? But there's the flip side of that, which is, can you take him down? When you look at Bo, when you look at your skill set, is there a world where you're like, I don't need to have him take me down, I'll take him down?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'll have a shot at that as well. I've always trained with a lot of high level wrestlers, especially here in Florida. And something I've always noticed is upper body work is where I do my best work normally. So in most of the fights, it doesn't really get there. Like in the Kevin Holland fight, I could already get him down with the single. But my first love is judo, and if I can just throw him around a little bit, that would be very cool. Yeah.
And you listen, no one's going to deny that Bo Nickal's a good fighter. Obviously, he's got a lot of
Oh,
talent, but you know, having been a two division champion in one, you fought a lot of bigger guys, those bigger, stronger guys. You know what that's like. Again, this is not a knock on Bo Nickal, but do you feel like that experience is going to play a part? Because again, now you're fighting, I guess you could say, at a more natural weight. I mean, obviously, I know the weight cut's never fun, but you were fighting a lot of bigger guys. I mean, I just had this conversation with Demetrius Johnson a couple of days ago, and he was saying, I never consider myself a flyweight in one because you're not really fighting a flyweight. You're fighting much bigger guys. Do you feel like that experience is going to help? Because you were at middleweight, you were fighting legit like 205 pounders and heavyweights.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's they had like a good thing going in the beginning with trying to stop the weight cuts, but they didn't really succeed. So I was always the smaller guy. So it's nice to be the bigger guy for once now. And he's not that massive, I think. He's a little shorter, maybe a little stockier than I am, but I think we won't be that far apart size-wise. And yeah, definitely, my experience is gonna be a factor in this one. Yeah, I've been in a lot of these fights. He definitely presents like a unique challenge because of his wrestling background. But yeah, I think I'm up for it.
You listen again. This is a mixed martial arts fight. I'm sure you'd love to go out there and just knock out Bo Nickal. I'm sure you would gladly take that win as much as anything else. But I'm always reminded of some of the great wrestler versus grappler matchups we've had in the UFC. And you think back to like a Tyron Woodley against a Damian Maia. Damian Maia went for like 30 shots, just could never get inside on Tyron. It wasn't the greatest fight in the world. He just could not get into where Tyron could be taken down, and that's what the fight kind of ended up being. But obviously, and I listen, be clear. I love Damian Maia. He's a legend. I don't think anyone's going to say differently. But I think obviously you've crafted your game a little differently in terms of blending your striking with your grappling. And I don't think you're so dependent on if you don't get one shot, you can't transition to something else. Do you feel like that is a weapon? Like if Bo refuses to engage in the grappling, you have other weapons you could either get him down or maybe even take his back standing.
Yeah, I think this fight is won or lost in the clinch. This is where most of the fight is gonna happen, and where the most important exchange in the fight will happen. So I'm really working on seeing if I can get him with some good knees, some good elbows, throwing him, tripping him, getting to his back. Yeah, that's the plan.
Can I can I ask, like, again, we're talking so much about the grappling because, as a grappling nerd, I'm like, man, I can't wait to see these grappling
That's the
exchanges
coolest
between
part
these.
of this fight anyway, right? Who wants to see us strike? We're both decent strikers, but come on, let's make it. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, 100%. But I do know, obviously, working down at Kill Cliff, you have an incredible group of guys around you working with Striking Henry, who, of course, is a legend. And I know Robbie Lawler, a lot of people have talked about how much of an influence he's had on that team. So, again, worst case scenario, if he just refuses to engage and you end up beating him, you end up fighting him in a striking battle, how confident are you in matching your hands against his hands? Because when you saw that Paul Craig fight, he had some power, but I don't know that we would sit here and say that was world class striking necessarily.
It wasn't, but he must have evolved since a little bit, I think. And he does throw some power. Yeah, it would be cool too, huh? Knock him
But
out.
I do appreciate you said that. Like, let's just be honest. We all want to see grappling, right? Like, I remember years ago when I think it was Jake Shields fought Damian Maia. In the back of my head, I was like, please don't let this end up being just like a striking match. It ended up being an incredible fight, scrambles and takedowns and reversals because it's two very high level grapplers. Come on, like that's we all know that's what we want to see, right?
Exactly. Like Damian Maya and Ben Askren, like the first round. Nobody wants to see that shit, bro.
Exactly. And listen, and that, I think again, it's wrestling versus grappling. But again, I don't think you're just a grappler. I don't think you're just a submission artist. And again, I think there was again, I like Bo, but I think there was a little bit of fear of going to the ground with a tall, lanky guy like Paul Craig, so well known for his triangles. Who is taller and longer and maybe lankier and maybe I'm just saying, like, just
And some good triangles as well. Come on.
yeah. So I'm just saying, like, if there was a fear there might be a bigger fear because Paul Craig, as good as he is on the ground, I don't. And this is not a knock on Paul Craig. I think people would consider you a higher level grappler than Paul Craig, right?
Yeah, I don't know. He did get Ankalaev. Come on, he's a good resume as well.
Yeah, yeah. Now, listen, as I said, when you talk about name value, like it or not, that's somewhat what this sport is built on, whether we agree with it or not. Do you feel like a win over Bo Nickal outside? Because I know we talked about you fighting Khamzat. Obviously, I think the Khamzat fight would have been a bigger win just because he's more established and he is a big name. But when you think about this, like if you go out and tap out, choke out, whatever the case may be, Bo Nickal, you could argue, and you could argue this is a bigger win than some of those other guys. Do you feel like even though he's not ranked, this still puts you in a really good position where you're maybe a fight away from a title shot? Like, am I crazy thinking that?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking because a lot of the guys in the top have already fought each other. So yeah, who knows if I can do this the right way, choke them out early. I think I have something to say at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask? Because I know we talked about you fighting Hamzat, and I did love that idea because we were kind of delay waiting for Strickland and DDP to fight. They fought. Dracus obviously won. It kind of put Strickland out of the picture. I think we were, Whitaker's kind of out of the picture right now, coming off losses. It looks like we are going to get Dracus and Hamzat. So can I ask your opinion on that fight? Because at times Hamzat has looked like an absolute killer, but we've had a couple of fights in there where, a little dicier, didn't quite go his way, and it got a little rough in a 3-round fight. We've kind of questioned like the Usman fight was on 10 days notice, and he was fading a little bit in that 3rd round. So, and obviously I know you know Kamaru from down at Kill Club, I'm sure. How do you see Hamzat and DDP, like in terms of a breakdown? How do you see that fight playing out?
Yeah. So I've had some experience with both of the guys. I've trained with both of them, and I'd say, especially in a 5-round fight, Hamzat's gonna most likely come out guns blazing again, shoot right away. But Dricus is not that easy to take down. He moves very well, although it looks a bit funny sometimes. His footwork is not that bad. He gets out. He circles pretty well. I don't see Hamza taking him down right away, and to be honest, I don't see Hamza choking him out in the 1st round. And then every round he doesn't choke him out, it's gonna get worse for him. Um, because with that unorthodox style of Dricus and those heavy hands, I think it might be a long night for Hamza.
It's funny because I'm definitely one of those guys early in Dracus' career where I'm like, he's good, but when he got to this guy, I was like, I kind of favor the other guy. Then you get to the next guy. I'm like, well, I think he's kind of going to go next. It just keeps happening, and I've just stopped doubting the guy. I'm just like, you know what? I'm done doubting the guy. After he's won his last couple of fights, like, I can't keep picking against this guy because I feel like he's not technically the most sound guy. He doesn't look like he's doing the right techniques, things like that, but he finds a way to win. And I agree with you. If Hamzat can't get him out of there early, it could be a very tough night for him going into that like 3rd, 4th, or 5th round.
He keeps going, man. That's the crazy thing. He looks dead tired. The technique just goes on. But he somehow he stays strong, stays very explosive. So yeah, I'm going with Dricus, but Hamza would be cool too if he gets it. But I think Dricus has a good chance.
I think we talked right when you got into UFC because you were at one point in the same organization as Dracus and you guys never got to cross paths. Having trained with them, like what is that experience? I know it wasn't like yesterday you trained with them, but what was it like working with them? And obviously now like being in the same organization and potentially a fight away, maybe a fight or 2 wins away from fighting one of them. I mean, that's the ideal scenario, right?
Yeah, it's very cool. Dricus he's a good dude too, by the way. And because of the language, I can understand what he says in Afrikaans. Um, yeah, he's like he's pretty similar to his fighting style, all over the place, ADHD and stuff, but very nice, very friendly guy. And I think that would be a very cool fight to get down the line. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I know you told me right when you signed, you're like, listen, I'm not trying to waste time here. I'm not trying to like, take 10 fights to get to a title shot. And now I think it says a lot about, again, even though again, technically Bo's not ranked, the name value's there. You go out and beat a guy like this, your co-main event of what has actually turned into a pretty crazy good card in Des Moines. Like obviously, Sanhagen Figueiredo is a good fight. Jeremy Stevens coming back. Like this is like one of those. It's a fight night card in front of a crowd, and it actually is like a big card. And we've seen these cards get sold out and stuff like this. So while it's not a pay per view, it almost feels like kind of a pay per view event in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah, at least it's not in the Apex. It's nice. It's gonna be a big show. I've never been to Iowa. People say it's not that nice, but
Lot of corn, lot of corn. You're going to see a lot of corn out there. A lot of corn, a lot of farms. I know that I know. I don't know if you saw this recently. Like the guys at TKO, the owners of the UFC, were talking about doing more international shows, and I think the one market that's kind of been slightly ignored in the last few years is Europe outside of London. You know, London and you know that area, Manchester, things like that. Would the idea, like, would you hope that they would start going back to Europe more? I mean, do you have a desire to fight closer to home? Some guys don't want to do it, just it's a pain in the butt with like tickets and travel and things like that. But would you hope that, like, I don't know if they go to the Netherlands necessarily, but like in that area? Because I remember, I think was it maybe it was Alistair Overeem fought in the Netherlands at one point. It was huge. It was great. Like that's a huge fight community out there. So would you have a desire to get them to go back to Europe or no?
yes, definitely. It would be very cool. Very cool to do another show in Rotterdam. I believe they did it in Ahoy at the time, and but it's maybe it's like even 10 years ago, a long time ago. But it would be very cool to bring the UFC back. Yeah, and I think if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then I'll have a big chance to get them there. And with the tickets and stuff, I just turn my phone off anyway, so I don't really care what it is for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it's funny going back a couple of years. I remember, and again, what happens in the gym should stay in the gym. But one of my favorite funny comments ever made before a fight was when Michael Bisping was fighting Luke Rockhold, and they had trained together. And Bisping said, I'm the unofficial Strikeforce champion," joking because he beat Luke in the gym. And I thought that was such a funny comment. And again, what happens in the gym? But is there a party that's like if you go out there and beat Bo Nickal, you take Bo Nickal down? Do you get an NCAA title? Like, is that maybe like he has to give you one of his championships? Is that work?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
We all remember, like, and listen, like, we've seen this before. Great wrestlers go out there. Like, I think we were all like, I know John Jones has a wrestling background too, but like when he took down Daniel Cormier, I think people were like, whoa,
Yeah,
Gustafson took down Cormier. People like freaked out because like you're not supposed to do that.
yeah.
Everyone talks about Bo's wrestling. He is a great wrestler, but there's no world where you can't just take him down.
And even greater wrestlers like Marab taking down Henry is carrying him around crazy.
Yeah, I love it. Well, listen, as much as and I did like the Hamza fight, I think there's other matchups you could have had again. Like I don't want to denigrate anybody, but you could have had other guys in that top 5 or 6, and I don't think the buzz would be as big as what we're getting with this Bo Nickal fight, right? Like I'm sure you felt it, right? Like there's a lot of excitement about this one.
And style wise, it's very cool. Yeah, a lot of the guys in the gym are excited. So yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Was there any part? Not to get too far, so let me ask you because I said like, what was your reaction? Was there any what's the word I'm looking for? Was there any surprise they gave you to him? Meaning they're clearly trying to build him into becoming a star. I don't think there's any giant secret about that. But stylistically, you are maybe not the best matchup for him because if he does use his wrestling, then he's got to deal with your grappling, and that's a whole other world. Like you could think of like strikers that he could just take down and put down on the ground. Was there any surprise? You're like, wow, they're giving me Bo Nickal.
Yeah, I was very very surprised because I did really expect them to give him a chance to build more because it's still very early in his career, and like style wise, I might be one of the harder matchups in middleweight for him. So yeah, I would expect them to give him like Adesanya would be like the biggest name and maybe arguably easier fight than fighting me. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
Or
appreciate that.
maybe he did
I was
something wrong, maybe he pissed somebody off at me. I don't know.
credit to the matchmakers that, like I said, they're not giving him the easy train because you do know, like there was that criticism I think of like Sean O'Malley early
Yeah.
in his UFC career, like they're just kind of giving him fights that he's supposed to win. He's not necessarily supposed to win this one, so I think that's saying a lot about they gave him this fight.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's a good challenge for him.
Yeah. Well, listen, let me be clear about this. I love Corey Sandhagen. I like Devison Figueiredo. I think that's a great main event. And I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you right now. This is my main event. This is the one I'm most excited about. When it got made, I like immediately reached out and was like, I gotta talk to Reinier. I can't wait to talk about this fight. So this is my main event personally. I cannot wait for this one. I don't know how much else you've heard about that, but this is my main event. So man, obviously have a great training camp. I know you got a great team around you down at Killcliff. Now that you're back down there in Florida, and thank you as always for the time. Man, I cannot wait. This is one of my most anticipated fights now the whole year, man. I cannot wait for May 3rd.
Thank you, man. Thank you for the support. I'm gonna wrap up training camp in a couple of weeks, and then let me see if I can get this guy.